The Sensory Trust is a national organisation. We're UK-wide and we promote and support inclusive design. And our concern really is that there are many people who don't have easy access to outdoor spaces. And that is particularly when you think about disabled people and older people. But what we've realised through our work is that a lot of the barriers that affect those people are equally shared by others. So if you think about somebody with young children and managing pushchairs, or you think about actually families and friends who go and visit places, they're equally actually impacted by the same barriers to getting around and enjoying a place. So if you're a designer and you're thinking, okay, I'm designing a space here, I can't actually just think about an average person. I'm having to think about people who have, for their primary sense, maybe they don't have sight or they don't have hearing. And what we know from experience is very often what it means is that what comes out as an end product, when people have really taken that on board, is a design that's way more interesting for people in general. And today I think we've almost started to pretend that we are just visual. But actually when you ask people about their strongest memories of place, very, very often what they come back with is a special sound, a special smell, something that really triggers the memory that isn't necessarily a visual recollection. And inclusive design means two things, I think, to us. It means technically making sure that places are accessible. That means people can get to them. It means people can get around them. So it means thinking of ramps as well as steps. It means thinking of accessible toilets. It means thinking, have we got some routes that are actually easy for people to get around? Are the surfaces non-slip and level and easy for wheelchair users and for pushchairs? And it means thinking about things like, if you are visually impaired, how will you know if you're approaching a set of steps? How do you know if there are hazards there that may be an issue for you? So there's a lot of technical detail that needs sorting out, and now we have legislation, we have DDA and we have Part M, and that's all helped a lot to define what those things need to be. But in our view, if people simply stick to the DDA, I think it has the danger that we end up with designs that treat disabled people, for example, as a specific group of people, instead of thinking that they are just part of the crowd. And really what we're doing is designing places so that whoever you are, whatever age you are, you can use and enjoy these spaces.
I think it's vital that architects and designers have input from people at an early stage like myself. Working from a rule book is all very well, but just because you've been taught how to make a door a certain width doesn't necessarily mean that everything else surrounding it will be accessible or even fundamentally inclusive, which is quite an important thing. Just simple things like the way light is reflected or the sound of something can be quite important to somebody with a sensory impairment.
To make a design inclusive is a real challenge and can probably seem overwhelming to try and think of all the things that you need to think of. But again, talking to people brings out the key things that you need to include, and also it helps you resolve some of the conflicts, because sometimes things that work well for one group or one particular range of disabilities actually work against another group. So there is a balance to be reached.
So the important thing, I think, behind all this is involving people in consultation. But in my experience, I've found that this can be quite a threatening thing for designers. And I think this comes from a slight misconception of what consultation needs to be. It's very easy for designers to think that what you're doing is you're getting a load of people in and asking them to actually design the thing partly on your behalf. And in our view, that really isn't what you're trying to do. The design skills sit with the designer. But the consultation is about bringing into play the different views that people have, the different ideas that they have for the experiences that they would want to have. And really what that does is it brings up a whole load of things that then the designer has the challenge of taking on board and interpreting through their design. We had a chance to do this recently with Eden Project in the design of their new Banrock garden. And what we wanted to do there was to say, okay, this is a new design here in the outdoor landscape at Eden. Let's involve a load of different people in generating their ideas, get those stitched into the design, and then bring those people back to actually get their response of, how did this work out and what did it create for them. So we set out some stalls full of materials, things that they could get hold of, different plants, different textures, and we asked them to just comment on these sort of things. And as ever, all sorts of interesting things came out and things that always surprise you. And one of the things was a person who uses a wheelchair who said to us, "I never get a chance to look down on people. I'm constantly looking up. And what would be great in a garden would be to have a chance that I could be the higher up one." So in the design of the garden, there is actually a raised platform that was partly put in there for that very reason, so that as a wheelchair user you could go onto that and get a higher vantage point across the garden.
When we first came to Eden, our first trip from the top of the hill down to the bottom, 2 of us came. I was in an electric chair and I had a friend who works with me in a manual chair. And the first thing that really got at us was the fact that as we came down the hill, there was a lot of very sharp drops down the side. And what we did then, we decided that, okay, we need to do something about that. So we came to the conclusion that using things like the offcuts of trees, the offcuts of stones, any stones that could be collected, could be used as a defence against going over the edge. And they've got little hedges now as well. So even if we went over the edge, we'd have a soft landing.
In the early days with Eden, I think we focused particularly on some of the technical issues. It won't surprise anybody who knows the site that it's quite physically challenging. And a lot of the issues for early visitors here was simply to do with fatigue and getting very tired going around the project. And that's particularly impacting older people. But also if you're a wheelchair user or if you're a very young child, these things are big issues for you. And we have strong memories of, in the early days, somebody carrying a tiny toddler, back to the car and just looking exhausted from all the effort. So we've put a lot of attention to things like transport. We've looked at how do people get to Eden easily. There are easy access buses now that directly link to the stations, for example. We've also looked at the on-site transport, and there's a land train that takes people from the visitor entrance right down to the bottom of the site and back up again, and that is wheelchair accessible.
The train's important to me because I can't walk the long distance, but if it wasn't there I would have to walk up all the paths, and the paths do get quite long and tiring because they're quite steep. And with the train it's handy because if you go down it's alright, and then when you're coming up, if you've just been skating or something like that and your legs are just dead, then it's cool because you just jump on and get on the way up, and then you've just got to walk a little way and then get on the car and then go home.